Same thing.
There's too much editing, bro. Too much editing.
Welcome
to the North Idaho Experience. Today is going to be all about basic hunting laws. Dave and I are pretty new to this world, so we're going to have a lot of dumb questions, and you might have the same dumb questions. So here we go. You're going to learn a lot today. We got our buddy Jake Kremer from North Idaho Archery, also Army, prior Army, and prior law enforcement. So he's in the right house right now. Looking forward to this conversation. I got the lovely and talented Dave Faller with me today. And my name's Seth Horst. So here we go. We're going to jump right in. Did you want to tell that story about straddling a deer right off the deer?
Yeah, sure. I can. Yeah.
I don't know. That's where we're going.
Seems like an appropriate
we started this by them asking me if I'm comfortable straddling this desk. So it reminded me of a deer story back in the day. Back when I was in high school, had an older friend who worked for the railroad.
Yeah.
And on his birthday, he would get a hunt as they drove down the railroad. I don't know if that's
like off the train.
Well, they drove the trucks down the tracks.
Oh, okay,
right,
okay,
right. Like they had the truck track. Got it. Yeah, I think it's probably hush hush. I probably shouldn't tell people what his job was. But
no names, no railroad names. Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
Anyhow, so he shoots this buck up on the hill, and somehow he ended up shooting it in the neck. Right, and this thing's running over the hill, and they're tracking it, and he finds it laying there, passed out. He's like, oh, sweet, this thing's dead, right? So he gets on the back of it, and his family is all about cutting the throat of deer. They're like, you got to blade him out, It's not my thing. I'm shoulder mounting my deer, so I'm not cutting his throat, right? But he cut his throat, but he didn't hit any arteries. He just gave it a tracheotomy. Like this thing was suffocating. His throat was filling up with blood.
No.
So now it can breathe. And it stands up with him on its back and takes off running.
He rode a buck?
Well, he didn't ride it very long.
Oh my God.
He ended up shooting that thing like 5 more times before it died.
Oh.
Yeah. So, yeah, he did straddle it.
This is the perfect way to start off the hunt day. Everybody's like, click off. All the ladies are like, no.
Yeah, we're done.
Not ours.
Sorry. That's real gruesome, but it's a fun story.
I'm not trying to top that, but we have a mutual friend, Dave and I do, that works at a title company. His name's Jared. He's a big dude. I won't say his last name because this story is fairly disturbing.
Jared, big dude.
Yeah. He told me a story when he first came to Idaho. He was hunting deer. Similar thing. Shot the deer. His buddy's like, oh, it's good to go. It's down. He gets up close and, he's within striking distance of the deer and it like rears up on him. And his immediate reaction is to punch it in the face repeatedly. He beat it to death with his fists. And he's a big dude, former baseball player. So I imagine he hits pretty hard. But he tells me that story. I'm like, dude, that's pretty weird, man.
Okay, I can tell you how to avoid that.
Yeah. See, this is why
avoid punching a deer in the face.
This is why you're here, man.
I can tell you how to avoid that.
Okay.
So I actually learned this from another good buddy of mine who's been hunting a lot longer than me. I've been hunting 20 some odd years now, but he had this happen to him, almost the same thing, right? But he ended up having to shoot it again. And it's true on every deer. If you walk up on a deer and its eyes are closed, it's not dead.
Oh, see, that's counterintuitive, right?
That's really good to know.
If its eyes are closed, it's faking. It's not dead.
It's trying to get you close so
it will jump up and it will run away. If their eyes are open and they're laying down on the ground, they're dead.
Okay.
Wow. That's good to know.
Now you're like, do you hunt both archery and rifle? Or are you most archery?
Strictly archery, unless I'm bear hunting. This year, we really went out hard on spring bear, and so I picked up the rifle again for the first time in like 7 years. But for deer, elk, everything else, I haven't picked up a rifle in a long time.
So is it more common with archery to have them be alive when you walk up on them?
I've never experienced that. Okay. No, I mean, I hunt high in a tree stand, and not to tell my own horn, but I'm pretty lethal with a bow. So,
well, you own an archery shop, so I think you probably should be, right?
Yeah. I've never experienced that.
So what's Big John's excuse? I hope he doesn't listen to this. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, you're gonna have to ask him, man. I think John is just really finally getting hard into archery. He's really learning the ropes on what it takes. I mean, it's a lot of work. it's different than just going out and shooting a target, right? I mean, there's a whole lot more involved when you're hunting animals. So it's a learning curve.
Why do you prefer it over a rifle?
Well, it's a long story.
Okay. We got time.
So I grew up hunting rifle. I killed a ton of deer with a rifle. I mean, every year I had my extra doe tags, and every year I got my buck, right? And it just became one of those things that, like, it wasn't like if I'm going to get my buck. It's like I'm going to go out and I'm going to shoot the deer I want to shoot because I'm shooting it with a rifle. It's not hard, right?
Yeah.
I know where the bucks want to be. I know where they're chasing does. So I just got, and again, not to like be cocky, but like I just got to the point that I knew whitetail so well that it wasn't a challenge anymore, right? And so when I got back from the Army after being in combat, I killed my first deer after coming back from war, and it was like such a gruesome flashback, right, to everything that happened overseas. And it was like I hated the violence of it, right? And it was just immediately like I did not enjoy it, right? There was no happiness involved. It was like I didn't enjoy this experience. Why did it have to be so violent, right? Like the loudness of the gun and the bullet, and like it was a pretty gruesome shot. You know, it was a doe. I ended up shooting her in the head, and it was pretty gruesome, right? And so there it was like, well, am I done hunting, right? Do I just check out and something I grew up loving and doing, and this is kind of my escape, going out to the woods? Like, how do I maintain this but not quit, right? Or not go out here with a rifle. And so that's kind of where archery was born for me, right? And so was able to go out there and really become, and this gets really a little hippie, but I felt like I was more connected in the woods to the mountains and the animals when I was hunting them on their terms, right? I'm harvesting this animal at such a distance that I have to avoid every single one of his senses to be successful. And when I am successful, nothing else in the woods knows I'm successful, right? I'm deadly quiet. I can shoot a buck and have 5 deer 50 yards away, have no idea, right? And don't run away. They don't know what just happened. There's no violence to it. You know, it's very quick and clean. Most of my archery kills, my bucks have gone less than 25 yards. Like, it's that quick and that clean. So in rifle, I think there's a aspect of adrenaline for wild animals, right? That fight or flight, that when you impact them with all that kinetic energy with a bullet, it actually makes them run further, right? I've shot bucks through the heart that went 150 yards with a gun. But if I shoot a buck through the heart with a bow, he's dead before the arrow passes through him.
The wound channel is probably not as large, right?
Yeah.
From a arrow.
Right.
Do arrows pass through a lot?
All my arrows.
Yeah.
I mean, so now we can really go down a rabbit hole if we wanted to. But if you build your arrow correctly and you have a good shot placement, there's absolutely no reason you should not have pass-throughs on deer and elk.
Okay.
Yeah. And you don't have to shoot world record speeds. You just have to have a correctly built arrow. So
in reality, kind of touching back on what you were just saying, they're probably, they don't feel it as much, I would guess.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, what was that?
It's kind of like,
and then they bleed out.
Yeah. They're not experiencing that insane amount of kinetic energy that's him impacting them with a rifle, right? Mm-hmm. If you work in law enforcement, so you've probably talked to people who've been stabbed before, and like, I didn't realize I'd been stabbed, right? Until everything had kind of calmed down. Like, they just know something hit them, right? And their body kind of just shuts off before they ever have the chance to get in a fight or flight, because they're already calm, they're already relaxed. It's not this big adrenaline dump. There's not a loud bang. There's nothing to really alert them to what just happened. So it's just so quick and clean. Yeah. And especially when I'm hunting at such a high angle, like that, generally the blood is coming out of the bottom of the chest immediately, right? Like I'm draining, I'm pulling the plug out. So yeah, I have to suspect that they don't necessarily feel it the way that they do with a bullet, right? I mean,
yeah. Full disclosure, my partner shot a tweaker one time, and that dude thought we had tased him. So apparently, if you throw methamphetamine into the mix, the same thing happens.
So don't give your deer meth.
Don't give the deer meth because they won't know.
Gotcha.
I'm going to change it up a little bit real quick.
We're getting dark here. So
No, it's good. No, it's fine because that's the reality of it, right? There's a lot of people that, oh, I don't want to kill animals, but they'll go to the grocery store and buy the meat. And I'm like, well, do you even know where that came from? Do you understand how? So the one thing that I've noticed, coming up to North Idaho is that people up here really, there's a respect for animals, right? I don't see a lot of people that don't harvest the animal and actually use as much of it as I mean, I didn't even know that I've never hunted, right? I didn't even know that people eat bear. I thought it was just a sport thing. I didn't realize until Jason Wiedebusch brought in some bear sausages. I'm like, this is amazing.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So what I'm getting at is that, anybody can go out and kill an animal. In fact, and every guy that's in law enforcement and fire thinks that they're a hunter. Like, I could do this. Well, yeah, we can go out and we can kill animals. But for people that are moving up here that want to get into hunting, how should they, rifle, arrow, everything else. What's the first steps that somebody like that should take when you're getting people that are coming from highly condensed areas that really don't have the hunting experience like you do? What's the first steps for people to take to get into it?
That's a really broad question. And that's something I've actually kind of been trying to dive into over the last year with people I have on my podcast, new hunters and stuff. But where I would start, honestly, would be walking into a pro shop. You could come into North Idaho Archery and you can, or, you walk into Fish and Game, go in somewhere where people are hunters, right? Go in there and talk to people because people love talking about hunting, right? They love talking about their success stories and failures. And so you go in there and you start asking questions. You're like, just be open, honest. I'm new at this. I really want to get into it. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. They're going to help you, right? They're going to tell you stories. They're going to tell you anecdotes about failures and successes. And that's going to be your probably your number one tool chest. That being said, right? What's your next step? Well, you need hunter's ed, right? So you can either go to a class in person or now you can do it online on the Idaho Fish and Game website. So before you even try to go out into the woods and kill something, do know that you have to take hunter's ed. You do have to buy licenses, tags. You do have to be permitted to do these things, right? You can't, it's just not a free for all in the woods like some people think it is, especially anti-hunters. We're not just out there rednecks drunk in the woods, shooting up the trees and the birds and doing whatever we want. Yeah, it's one of those things that I know is super daunting, right, to people because there's so much to know and so much information out there that's like, what is good information? What's bad information? What do I absolutely have to know to be successful? And honestly, just surrounding yourself with people who hunt, right? Talking to people who hunt and just doing it. I've always told people hunting is its own greatest teacher. You're going to go out there and fail, and you have to be okay with failure. Right? You have to be completely okay with going out there and going home with your tail tucked because frankly, it's not as easy as it seems.
I think that's one of the things that holds people back is just getting out and into the forest, getting out into the woods. Because the first time I hunted, I'm looking around multiple times. I'm like, where do I go? Like, what do I do? I think just understanding maps and being able to just get out there and just spend some days out in the wilderness is huge.
Yeah. So getting out there scouting, I would say the number one best thing for experienced hunters and brand new hunters anymore is hunting apps like Onyx, Hunt Stand. All those apps that you can track yourself through the woods, right? You can do a track from your hunt, from your truck back to your truck. And so you don't ever have to worry about getting lost in the woods, right? Now, has that kind of cut down on some woodsmanship? Yeah, right. There used to be kind of some art in understanding and recognizing trees and landscapes and rock formations and how to get back to your truck and understanding compasses and maps, things like that, right? But we've advanced, we've got technology. And so that's the number one. People like, well, I don't want to get lost in the woods, right? Or if I get hurt, how do I get a hold of people? Well, these hunting apps really cover all that.
Right.
And the Onyx especially super nice for users because it shows you what public land is, what private land is. Sometimes it even has contact information for private landowners. So if you want to ask to hunt on private land, you can call them or go to their house. A lot of them have their home address, which is kind of weird to me, but no privacy anymore on the internet.
No. It's super intimidating, I think. And what really helped me coming here was tying in with people. I think you took me rifle hunting. Was that last year or the year before? It was a while ago. And John and Austin, and just teaming up with people. And it's, sometimes people are a little hesitant to take new people out, but make some friends that are in that world, and just learn from them.
I took a buddy to that spot that I showed you guys.
Yeah,
right where you and Austin were hunting, and he shot a buck in like 3 minutes.
Are you freaking kidding me?
Like a really,
it
nice
was a
buck.
Perfect spot.
Yeah,
like this like valley funneled down into this really tight area. They were clearly coming through there. Must have been a timing issue. Yeah, it's probably Austin's.
Well, I will say, I mean, the first time I went hunting was just with a buddy, and I didn't even attempt to shoot anything. Right, we just went out, and I'm like, I just want to learn. Yeah. So it was a cool experience to go out there, and even though I wasn't the one doing it, like, it was neat to see him field dress and do all that stuff and participate in those things, because I had no clue.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just getting out there. It is daunting. It is a huge learning curve, and you're always going to be learning, right? I mean, I talked to guys, actually most recently this week, I talked to a guy who grew up hunting in Idaho, right? And he was asking me for help, like how he's trying to set up scrapes. He's trying to get into archery hunting for whitetails. And so, like, trying to discuss thermals and prevailing winds with him, and how to set up for him, and how they work together on landscapes. Like, that's advanced stuff, right? And he's been hunting for his whole life, and he was like over my head, right? He was super confused, and so I had to break it down. And that's the type of stuff that people can really get into the weeds. Don't worry about it, right? Go out there, learn the sign, learn deer behavior, learn how to process an animal, right? Field dressing, things like that, and just learn how to be a woodsman.
Right. That's another thing too, for people that are coming up here. Like I said, a lot of people that are coming up here that are interested and that are watching our podcast, like I said, they're not very experienced with North Idaho. I've been to multiple hunting stores, and I'm like, oh my God, like, I can go spend thousands of dollars in a day. What is it that people should focus on if they're starting out hunting, or this is a new area? Like, what is it that they should focus on in terms of having just what they need?
Yeah. So
obviously it goes back to coming and seeing you, but
yeah, well, it's different in different parts of the state, right? I grew up hunting in fairly cheap boots, and my feet paid the price for it, right? Like, I would, after 3-4 miles, like, my feet were screaming. And in North Idaho, if you're going to hunt in North Idaho, true North Idaho, you can't do that, right? Like, a good pair of boots is make or break, because this country is steep, it's deep, it's wet, it's brushy, and you're going to be walking a long ways. So this is the country that expensive boots were built for. Truly is. So honestly, number one thing I would say is a good pair of boots. Camo. I mean, I hunted in a flannel and Carhartts for 15 years, and I killed a lot of deer. You don't need camo. If you're a tree stand hunter for whitetails, yeah, it makes a little bit of a difference. But if you're rifle hunting deer, do you need to go out and buy $1,200 in Sitka? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You could go to Goodwill and buy a pair of used Carhartts and a flannel and be out hunting. You're just fine. It's
good to know.
10, 12 years just layering, right, for the cold weather. You just got to know how to layer, wear your long johns, wear your next layer, get your Carhartts on, get your warm jacket on. You look like the Pillsbury Dough Man, in November, but you're out there hunting, right? Now you got the money, you want to spend the money on nice camo, sure. But Walmart sells $15 camo real tree shirts that work just as good as the Sitka does,
Right.
So I would say don't focus on camo for sure. The next thing obviously you're going to need is a weapon. You're going to need a firearm. Honestly, you don't. My first gun was a $250 single shot 243, and I killed plenty of deer with it. My next rifle was a $500 Remington. Anymore, they make really, really nice rifle packages. The Ruger American rifle, it's super cheap. I think it's like $350. Don't quote me on that. I haven't priced them in a long time, but I know they're not overly expensive.
Right.
Fantastic rifle. They'll kill anything you want in Idaho. So just get the right caliber. I would obviously recommend for elk anything in the 30 caliber. So 30-06, 308.
So that's what I ended up getting. Talking to a few guys, I ended up getting a Tikka T3 30-06. And, I was like, I just need a gun that'll take care of anything that I want to go out there and
I
shoot.
love the 30-06.
Yeah.
I grew, that's my bread and butter. I grew up on the 30-06.
All right. Check. I got one.
Did that right.
One here.
You know where I messed up is I got a 6.5 Creedmoor when I got here, and now everyone tells me I'm apparently like limp wristed because of that.
Don't hunt with your duty rifle.
Yeah. Don't do that. Don't do that. I stepped up. I went. Oh, where did I get that? I can't remember. I got it at one of the local gun shops, and the guy was like, I had no idea, and I should have asked somebody. I think steered me towards that.
And what's funny is I'm one of those people. Even when I went to real estate, I wanted to find like the best guy to learn from, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's the same thing. It's nice to know that you're here because and we'll link I'm sure we can link your podcast and talk about North Idaho Archery. But I think that's probably not being a hunter per se. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably my biggest piece of advice for people who want to do it is I'm trying to always seek out the people that I know. The guy, Nate Herbig, that, I started talking to when I wanted a gun. I mean, he's the guy that he lives off the land, right? He's fine. Power goes out. It's just another day for those people. They're amazing. And I think that's probably the biggest thing is being able to talk to somebody like yourself that actually knows before you go spend money on a gun or a bow or things that you don't need to be able to talk to somebody before you do that.
Yeah. I think that's sage advice too, is like, you don't need to go out and buy a freaking $3,000 rifle. You know what I mean? Spend the money on boots.
Yeah. Spend the money on basics on boots. Yeah. And the next question people are going to ask, well, what about a pack, right? Do I need a pack? The first 10 years, I drug my deer out whole to my truck. Did it suck? Yes, it did. You're going to save your back a lot if you get yourself a pack. Yeah. But do you need the $500 Kafaru or whatever it is anymore? No. A simple Alpine pack frame. If you want to quarter your deer up in the field and not drag its ass 2 miles back to the truck, save yourself some energy.
That was back when you were young.
Back when I was
There's
young.
a lot of guys right now listening to this that do not feel like men, knowing that this guy's just dragging deer out of the forest.
Oh, it sucked. I ain't gonna lie to you. Like, by the time you're halfway back to your truck, you're like, why am I here? This is miserable.
I've noticed a lot of the people that reach out to us that are like moving to the area. Everybody's talking about bow hunting. Is bow hunting becoming a lot more popular right now? I think it is. Yeah, I really do. It's because of Joe Rogan, isn't it? And Jocko. I can't say one reason or another why it is. And if I had to speculate, my guess, honestly, is that hunting has become very expensive. It just has, right? And the days of just going out meat hunting, I'm not saying they're over, but it's very few situations where you're saving money by hunting for. I've noticed that too. I've got buddies that live out of state, and they put in an Idaho tag when you live out of state.
Oh, expensive.
Yeah.
Then you factor in the trip, taking a week off work, whatever. Like you're thousands of dollars. You're thousands of dollars into it. So like if this is a money thing, then you're being fiscally irresponsible, right?
I don't hear a lot of people say that though. From most people up here, it's just they want to know where their meat's coming from. They want to know it's organic, and
I think
that's noble.
That's what people want, right? They want to know what they're putting in their mouths, and so part of that, right, that expense is the experience. So now we're paying for the experience, right? And frankly, the archery experience is maybe a little bit more romantic, right? You're just much more involved. You're one-on-one with these animals. It's much more personal, and it's a challenge, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're paying for it anyway, let's have a challenge, right? Let's pay for this experience. Let's enjoy it and make it what it can be, right? And some people, they just want to have success, right? They just want to kill something, and that's fine. If that's what you're happy with, and that's your story, and you're happy with whatever you kill and whatever you spent on that kill, fine. But I think that is why a lot of people are switching to archery, is it's kind of cathartic. They can do it in their backyards, and it's more of a personal experience in the woods. And you get a longer hunt season. There's that. You get a hunt September, October, November, and December for whitetails anyway. And for archery guys, we get to hunt the rut in September for elk, which is, that's an experience in itself. If you've ever had a bugling bull screaming at you, that's something that rifle hunters miss out on, So I think that's part of it. And to your point, maybe Joe Rogan, maybe it is becoming popular because mainstream guys are getting into it now. And, I would caution some people about that. I think, I don't have any ill thoughts about Joe Rogan. I think he's a great guy. I love a lot of things he stands for, but can't really compare his archery experiences to most people's archery experiences, right? Like those type of people are going on high dollar hunts or really coveted trophy tags. Like they have the money to get these really nice tags in these really nice areas where animals are unpressured. And so he's fun to watch, right? All these things are fun, but it's not necessarily a real experience, right? Where like Meat Eater, I would say would be more of a real experience for people, right? That's something that people can relate to. He's generally doing over the counter stuff that anyone can do. Money, again, that's what breaks down everything. It's all about money anymore. So if you got the money to do it, you can do it.
Yeah. So would you say most of the hunting in North Idaho is public land? I mean, there are large chunks of private land as well, but
yes.
Are you, I know obviously I'll never ask where you're hunting, but, are you hitting public land for the most part?
Yeah, I'm pretty much, I would say 95% public land.
Okay.
I might get on my soapbox
Jump
a
up there, bro.
little bit. Growing up in Idaho, it was different. It didn't really matter if it was public land or if it was private land. Like if it was posted orange, you couldn't hunt there. And if it wasn't, like it was free game. Like you knew if somebody didn't want you on the land, like you didn't really need to knock on doors. Sometimes we did just to double check, right? But it was more open. There was a lot more ground to hunt. There was a lot more private land to hunt. And as people have moved in who aren't from here, right, they buy the land up and, well, this is my land. I don't want anyone on it, whether or not I hunt it or not. I don't want you to hunt it. These are my pet deer or whatever it may be. They, and it's their private property. It's their rights. So that's on them. But it has changed a lot. So yes, we have a lot of public land, but a lot of that public land is landlocked. You can't get past private land to get to it anymore. Or, which is something we've talked about while we're out in the woods a lot, is a lot of this public land is so steep and deep, it's not huntable. It is not feasible. It is, you're talking 35 to 40% grade on old growth timber. Nothing lives in it. Nothing can live in it, right? I mean, you got owls and squirrels. There's no feed, there's no bedding. It's steep and deep. And so, yeah, there is technically lots and lots and lots of public land. But I would say that 90% of hunters are in 25% of that public land hunting it, right? There's 75% of that public land, or maybe it's even 50%. It's, this is just throwing numbers out there, but the public land that's usable for most people is much less than what is actually out there, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And whether it's, people are willing to go into those areas, if that's part of it, or if there's no access, I'm willing to do some pretty crazy things, but there's even some country that I've looked at and I've tried to hunt it. I've got into it and I'm like, it's not doable, right? There's some places that you have to hunt the animals where they're killable, and there's some places they're just not killable, So that's the reality of it.
Do you typically hunt on your own or do you go with somebody?
If I'm elk hunting, generally I'm with somebody, not all the time. I have spent plenty of time by myself out there, but it is generally more successful to have a caller and a shooter during the rut for elk. But whitetail hunting, I'm strictly by myself. I mean, I'm in my tree stand and I'm a trophy whitetail hunter. So I'm trying to fool very mature whitetails in the mountains, and having another human scent with me is just makes it 10 times.
That's your jam, right? Whitetail.
Yeah.
I've heard this through John, and you put a lot of work in.
I do.
Because you don't just go to the woods that one time. Like you're doing a lot of background work. You're scouting, using trail cams. Is that generally the way to be successful? Or is that just because you're a trophy hunter?
Well, it's generally, I don't want to say that's the way to be successful. I don't want people to think I have to have trail cameras to be successful, right? You can go out there and be successful and harvest what makes you happy without those things. That is what makes me successful. because I'm not hunting deer, I'm hunting a deer, right? I'm spending 7-8 months putting out my community scrapes, scouring the mountains, looking for the buck that I want to hunt, right? I'm looking for a very mature deer in a certain score category, right? And if I can't find them like a trophy quality, I'm just looking for something exponentially mature. Last year, I couldn't find a good scoring buck. I killed 2 bucks that scored right at 130. Both of them did. One was 9.5 years old. One was 12.5 years old.
What's the scoring mean, like for someone that doesn't know, like me?
Yeah. So the score of the antlers, it's the overall gross inches of antlers, right?
Oh, okay.
So like a trophy quality by Idaho Fish and Game textbook, if you're going to court for a crime on wildlife, a trophy quality buck would be 150 inches.
Okay.
Right.
And that's measuring every angle and piece of the antler?
Yeah. So this is fun because I'm actually an official scorer too.
Oh, shit, yeah.
So when you're scoring a buck, which we can go way down into it, but essentially you're getting the width, the inside width of the antlers, right? So some deer you get wide deer, some get really narrow deer. You're scoring the length of the main beams, you're scoring the length of the points, and then you're scoring the circumference of the main beam in between each tine. And so each one of those are recognized by a different identifier, right? So the tines would be the G1, the G2, the G3, the G4, right? And so you're scoring those for length, and then the main beam would be the H score, which would be the circumference. So yeah, that's,
and you factor in the spread and
the inside spread counts to the score. The outside spread is counted, does not go toward the score. But as a scorer, I do take it as it's a conservation thing.
Okay.
Pope and Young and Boone and Crockett both want to know, the health of these animals. And that's the fallacy that a lot of people have, is I think Boone and Crockett and a Pope and Young are a big buck scoring business, and they're not. They're a conservation core that's all they do. Is the only reason they keep track of the scores of wild animals is to show. It originally started because they wanted to be able to show future generations what used to be on the landscape, because hunting was wiping out the wildlife. And so they're like, well, we need to keep track of these things so that people can see what used to be here. And now, essentially, is what it's showing is the health of the herds in different parts of America. So you can track which deer have the best healthy genetics based on Boone and Crockett scores in certain areas. So they do that based on length of main beam, mass, and width, right? And so a lot of people don't like the Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young scoring system because it doesn't account for some things that they think should count. That is just not a factor in the health of the deer.
Well, I'm just glad it's not all about length, right, Dave?
Yeah. Otherwise, I'd win.
Oh man, it's great.
No, this is pretty cool. It's neat to hear that, because I think there's there's an uneducated group.
Mm-hmm.
I'm part of it.
Me too.
Right? Sure. An uneducated group that, especially when people move here, that don't understand really what hunting is for.
Mm-hmm.
I think you get a lot and a lot of females,
Mm-hmm.
They get upset that the animals are getting hurt and everything else. But there's sport hunting, and there's hunting for food as well. And there's also the mix in between, right? Where you're maybe taking down something big, but you're also processing it. So what I've noticed is that when I was in law enforcement up here, I don't know how many times I had to dispatch a deer because it got hit by a car or something else. And I swear every time that happened, there'd be somebody'd pull up and be like, "Hey, I'm a butcher. Can I like, how many of you are there up here?"
Yeah. But,
I've noticed that people are very, they're routine at using the animals up here. Yeah. It's not just a sport thing in the community.
Yes. Yeah. And so I'd like to touch on what you were saying there, where, people are super concerned, like animals are being hurt, like they don't like the idea of an animal suffering. Hunters absolutely hate that as well. Right. And so what I tell people anti-hunters, when I'm talking to them, I try to be very civil, right? Oftentimes the conversation devolves, but, that person, that anti-hunter, that whatever, right? They probably care about the individual deer more than I do, but they cannot possibly care about deer as a whole more than I do. Right. And hunters in general.
Right.
We spend more time and effort trying to make sure deer are healthy, surviving, having healthy fawns, making it to the next year than we do killing them. Right. I spend way more time making sure deer are healthy and survive to the next year than I ever do killing them. You know, I've saved more deer than I've killed. And you know, I've heard it from other hunters in the past. Like, if it took me laying down my life to make sure that deer as a whole could succeed and continue forward, that's what I would do, right? And I don't think that non-hunters would say that.
No,
right? I think they care about the individual deer. They care about its feelings, things like that. And we care about the species. We want to feed our families. We want them to be successful, right? We want to see them prosper. And so, yeah, we care about the animals. It's not just a cruel thing. And for all intents and purposes, just so, you know, people are aware, it's not all happiness and high fives when you take an animal, right?
Right.
I've killed a lot of things. In combat, hunting in the woods, as a cop, you know, I've been in shootings, and there's always a bit of remorse there, right? Like, you took a life, especially of a wild animal,
right?
Because this is the most free thing that has ever lived. It gets to live more free than you and I ever could imagine. And I took that from it, right? But now I know I do have that meat for my family. I get to feed my friends. I get to enjoy this.
Well, there's a mutual relationship there. I mean, you look at a lot of people that are anti-hunters, you know, they'll still be okay with, you know, those nomadic tribes, right? That would, those nomadic tribes that would live off of a herd, right? They literally take care of the herd. They follow the herd. They migrate with the herd. And there is an understanding that if that herd is not healthy, they can't take care of themselves. And that's kind of the same thing that I get from a lot of hunters up here, is that it's taking care of, like you said, the species, so that opportunity exists. And it's not just about the sport. It's about the opportunity to coexist and be able to understand that we need them, they need us. And that's just kind of what it is. So it's neat to hear that, because that goes right back to, like I said, those nomadic herd tribes and things that would literally live off of that. They have to take care of that as well.
Well, hunters are the only individuals in American history who have voted to tax themselves. So the Pittman-Robertson Act was voted on by hunters, and it is an excise tax on hunters, so that our dollars go back to the land, to the animals, conservation, making sure that they are able to continue for all of time. And we're paying that extra tax anytime you buy anything outdoor related.
Right.
Wow. I mean, there's also the argument that, you know, death in nature is always cruel.
Mm-hmm.
So
it is.
So an animal that gets, you know, there's no suffering involved when it's shot, you know, clean shot.
It's the cleanest, quickest death that animal could possibly experience in the wilderness.
Yeah.
I mean, I've on my own property, I walked up behind my house 2 months ago, and I had a doe that had 2 fawns that had made it to this spring, and they strung out one of those fawns over 100 yards. I mean, she was strung out. There's guts everywhere. I mean, this is gruesome, right? But that's the reality of death in the wild.
What did that, you think?
It was coyotes.
Yeah. So I've had a multiple on my property too, and I live 15 minutes outside of town, but
yeah,
multiple coyote kills. And it's like, yeah, it's nasty.
It's nasty.
It's not a good death.
Right? And as a hunter, we always are aiming to give the quickest, cleanest death that we can, right? That's all we practice. That's why people get better equipment. That's why people get better arrows, better bows, better optics, better guns, better bullets, right? We're always wanting to be more efficient because we don't want that animal to suffer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, just as a trooper, man, I've literally hundreds of deer that have been hit by cars that a lot that I had to shoot too. And it's like, that's never pretty.
Yeah. And it's just it gets on it gets on my nerves when you hear people think that you just want to go out there and hurt an animal. Cause that's not the case that I've met from anybody that is a hunter. I don't know. Right.
No. And I would, and again, like, I mean, a lot of anti-hunters hate the word trophy hunter, but I'm a self-prescribed trophy hunter, right? Which what that means to me is I enjoy the hunt. I'm only going to harvest the most mature animal that I can. And if that means not killing anything, great, fine. I'm okay with that. Right. I am perfectly okay eating my tag and letting that younger deer live another year so that maybe next year I can enjoy that harvest. Right. And so personally, I think that they put too many emotions into it, you know?
Right. No, for sure. There's a purpose behind it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was about to ask a question. And I'm switching gears here a little bit here, but chronic wasting disease. This is probably something you know about. You know, I've read about it. I've heard about it. Is it here in Idaho as well?
Yes. They tested down in Unit 14. They got some mule deer that tested positive for CWD. I haven't heard of it in any other units. They spent a lot of years and a lot of money making sure it didn't come here. And unfortunately it did arrive. So Unit 14 is kind of a wasteland right now, from what I understand, because the Fish and Game issued just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tags and had people just go out and kind of
try to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
Because now if that gets a foothold here, is that going to be a huge problem?
You know, there's a couple trains of thought on that. There's some people in the Midwest that are like, you know, we've had CWD for decades and our deer herds are just fine. And so massacring the deer is not doing them any favors, right? They're adapting, they're figuring it out, and the strongest and the best are surviving. Do I think it's going to affect Idaho? Yes, right? Initially. I mean, I think with any new disease, it's going to take its toll really hard until you get a population of animals that may be a little resistant to it, right? So, I mean, obviously, we all hope it doesn't hit the entire state, but is massacring all the animals in hopes that more of them don't get CWD and die from it the answer? I don't know. You know, there's a lot of people who don't agree with that. I'm not a fish and game biologist, so they do what they do for a reason.
I'm sure a big farmer will come up with a shot for that, right? Dave, did you just roll your eyes at me, Dave?
Big Pharma, you're gonna bring them in here right now? That's where we're going.
What about wolves and bears? Are they? I know there's a lot of wolves in Idaho.
Yes.
Are they damaging the populations, or has that just always been the case and it can handle it?
Well, again, now you're really trying to poke the bear, huh?
Am I? I don't know. I'm just asking questions from a newbie.
You're pissing on the hornet's nest. Wolves are probably the most contentious topic in Idaho.
Okay.
They introduced wolves back when I was a kid, and I can tell you that, yes, they have had an effect on elk herds. I would say on deer, not so much, right? Yeah, up in the mountains way high, yeah, you're getting some deer killed by wolves, but generally elk are a lot easier to hunt. They smell a lot more than a deer does, so it's easier for a dog to hunt them. And then when you can hunt, 30, 40 animals at once instead of one deer, it's a little bit easier. But yeah, the wolves are doing damage. They are taking their fair share and more. And so you talk to guys, the stuck in the rut guys who were up in Bonner's Ferry, some of the country that they grew up hunting and were successful every year hunting elk. They don't see any elk, any moose in those areas anymore. And so part of it's like, well, are the elk herds gone or did they move? All right. And so I think initially there was a big kill off, right? I know, especially up like the Selway and the Locksaw, there was a herd they said the herd was like 16,000 strong up there.
16,000?
And now
Damn.
there's less than 2,000 of them.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, yes, their population decline is there. Is it also forcing the elk to go to new areas that they weren't historically? Yeah, I think so, So I think it's kind of a double-edged sword where, yes, they had a population decline, and yes, it made them much more difficult to hunt, but now it's pushing the elk into easier places to hunt. So guys are, shooting their elk in an ag field, in the middle of October because Well, they don't want to go into the mountains because they'd rather take their chances with us. You know, and that's, again, I don't want to piss on the hornet's nest. That's from my experience, that's the things that I see, the people that I know who have been in this industry for a long time, what they see. You know, the fishing game allows you to harvest 10 wolves a year for a reason per person, you know.
Holy crap.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And they're very difficult to harvest. So, I mean, if you can harvest 10 a year, holy shit, good on you. But
I know there's I don't know if it's a nonprofit or what, but they'll pay for wolf.
Foundation for Wildlife Management. Found fantastic people. Yeah, if you sign up with them, I think I don't know what the cost of the membership is, but they will reimburse you for all of your costs for every wolf that you harvest, up to maybe $1,500, something like that.
Wow.
So yeah, it's for the trappers, it's really nice, right? It's because those guys are honestly being more successful than anyone else. It's just the fact of the matter. Trapping is more effective than hunting wolves. They're very, very, very skittish. So they've figured out people, but, and trapping costs a lot of money. You know, it's a lot of fuel. It's a lot of costs involved. And so Foundation for Wildlife Management is really a good program for that.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize that. That's a question we get a lot. What kind of animals are up there? I'm like, well, there's wolves. I think there's like 2,000 in the state. I talked to a lady recently. I think she's on that foundation, and she told me that.
Yeah. There's a lot of them, but, you know, I think bears don't get enough credit for how much damage they do, you know?
Well, I mean, wasn't it just recently that a guy shot a grizzly down in St. Mary's? Thought it was a black bear?
Be careful.
I know. Yeah, I heard about that one.
Bringing that up.
So wait. He thought it was a grizzly, or he thought it was a black bear?
From what I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, so that we're clear on this, but supposedly he had it on a camera and he sent it in to Fish and Game, and it was identified as a black bear.
Oh.
And so once he killed it, they realized it was actually a grizzly, and so it kind of goes back. He cooperated with the investigation and everything else, from what I understand. But I mean, grizzlies aren't as common up in this area, especially down south, correct?
Yeah. So that's not necessarily south of us. That's more east of us, southeast a little bit, Unit 6. Now, in the Panhandle, grizzlies are fairly common.
Okay.
You talk to the people who've grown up there, they see grizzlies every year, very commonly. So, yes, there are a lot of grizz in North Idaho. Now, in that particular unit, Unit 6, not common.
Okay.
So that's why it was a misidentified. You know, it's a unit that they haven't really seen any grizzly in quite some time, if at all, in the last 20 years. It was a young grizzly, so the identifying markers of a mature grizzly weren't necessarily there. You know, now after the fact, knowing it was a grizzly, watching the video is like, okay, yeah, I see it, right? But I can see from, if you're looking at it like, there's not really any grizzlies there, that's a black bear, right? I can see the mistake being made. Is that an excuse? No. You know, I think whoever the employee was at the Fish and Game is probably being reprimanded for it. But yeah, the guy did the right thing, and unfortunately he did harvest an immature grizzly.
Yeah.
That brings a question to mind. So I know in other states, California, I think it's like this: when you're bow hunting, you cannot carry a pistol.
That is so stupid.
It's stupid, right? You can do that here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And I imagine you do.
Yes.
Yeah. Especially when you've got grizzlies and wolves, right?
Yeah, it is the stupidest thing ever.
That's where I make an argument for my 10 millimeter, because a lot of guys will carry a revolver, like a large caliber. Me too. And my thought process is like, wow, if a pack of wolves comes up and I've got a 6-shot revolver, a 5-shot revolver, I'm like, man, that's not great odds.
That's not enough.
No. So yeah, I also carried 10.
Yeah.
When I'm out in the woods, and I've got 17 rounds plus another mag.
Same. G9 ammo.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Stuck in the Rut guys I mentioned a little bit ago. They probably 15 years ago. I mean, it was a while ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago. They were in the Field and Stream magazine. One of them was out elk hunting and got surrounded by wolves and shot 4 of them with his bow.
Damn.
Yeah.
Dude, those are the most badass stories, like the guys that freaking choke out a cougar.
Yeah.
Like, that is awesome.
Yeah. In my mind, I think I could do that. But I know.
Just open up a new bar. You can find one.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Different kind.
Where do we go?
That's good stuff.
That's funny.
Okay, so let's touch on a couple of laws because okay, so you can carry a pistol when you're archery hunting. What about hunting on your own land? So I fully intend. I've got 5 acres outside of town. It's in the county. I've got a safe place to shoot. Am I good to shoot a deer or elk on my property?
Yes.
Yeah. See, that's another thing in a lot of states. That would be a no-no.
I do know that there is some HOAs in Kootenai County that are like, you can't fire a gun on your property. I would do it anyway. Like I would take that to court all day long. State law allows you to do it.
I asked Sheriff Norris myself because he lives kind of near me, and he's like, good to go.
He's right on the edge of a HOA that wouldn't be too happy, but oh well.
Right down below me.
Oh well.
Too bad. Because I've got a herd. I haven't seen them this summer, but in the fall and spring, there's a herd of elk that just chills and comes right through my property.
Okay. What about baiting?
Okay. So legal for bears, illegal for deer and elk.
Got it.
What if I spill some cornmeal by accident in the field by my house? I'm not saying I would do that. That's terrible, but kids and
it is perfectly legal to feed wildlife. It is illegal to hunt wildlife over feed.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
If you're, in the wintertime, now they still kind of frown upon it because you don't want animals to become accustomed to having that feed. Right. But you technically can feed deer through the winter and keep them healthy. You're not dying from the snowpack if that's what it takes. Fish and Game does their own feeding in the wintertime, and down south, they have elk feeding programs if they have particularly bad winters. But yes, cannot hunt over bait in Idaho.
Okay. But bear, you can.
Bear, you can.
Like you can just literally shoot it right there at the bait station.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. I mean, you need a bear baiting permit to put out a bait, but you get for $12, you get 3 permits.
Well, shit.
It's crazy.
That is crazy.
Would a salt lick be considered baiting?
Yeah. So
I'm asking these questions because I have no idea.
Good question.
Yeah, so
because I know a ton of people have
really
a salt
interesting
lick.
because
I may or may not have a couple.
There's yes and no.
I like this.
So
I live in the gray area.
If the salt and minerals were put out by the cattle farmer in the woods, because we have free range cattle here, it's not illegal. If you place the salt and the minerals out with the intentions of hunting over it, it is illegal.
Okay.
Now, where it becomes really weird and gray is there's so many people putting salt and minerals in the woods. And if I happen to shoot an elk that is 100 yards from a mineral lick and I genuinely had no idea it was there's no way that could be prosecutable, right? Like, so it's really hard, and I would say generally, yes, it is illegal, to hunt over it. There's very few instances where it's okay. That being said, if you're putting out minerals because you think you're going to shoot a deer over it or an elk over it in October, you're going to be really disappointed. They hit minerals in the spring and sometimes in the summer because they need those minerals after going through the rut and growing new antlers. And it's really good for does when they're growing babies, right? They want that calcium and stuff. But once they are hardhorn, you're going to be sitting over salt for a long time before you see something.
That's good to know. Yeah.
Not that I'm encouraging people to
no
try.
That was just our dumb questions.
Yeah.
Is it like from a purist standpoint, is it frowned upon? Like if I seriously shot a deer or elk in my pasture next to me, is that like, and really my thought is like, I just want the meat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Are you happy with it?
Yeah.
Fine.
Nobody's going to, okay.
Great.
Just checking.
You're going to eat it?
I just want you to be my moral compass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
They're hard enough to hunt. If you can get an easy one, take the easy one.
There you go. Okay, no, I feel better.
You don't get a lot of easy ones.
I got permission. I'm good. So basic hunting laws then, do you want to touch on seasons? I don't want to get too deep into it. I know there's a ton of them, but overall roughly the rifle archery seasons.
Yeah. So archery season, which you need an archery permit for, you need archery hunter's ed for, runs from August 30th to September 30th. In most units. Now that changes in some units throughout the state. So make sure you check your regulations and where you're at based on your unit. But for up here, August 30th to September 30th is archery. Then it closes for 10 days and opens up October 10th to October 24th for rifle hunters for elk. At the same time, deer opens for rifle October 10th and runs till December 1st for rifle hunters with a whitetail tag. In the Panhandle, if you have a general tag, you can also hunt that long. But if you're in like the Palouse zone, if you buy a general tag, it ends November 3rd. So it's a lot of nuances.
Yeah, I've looked through. Is it Fish and Game where you get the information?
Yeah, you can get. I mean, we have the Fish and Game license books at our shop, or you can go into the Fish and Game office, or you can go online.
It just was like confusing for me when I was first looking through it, and it was easier to just find somebody and be like, "Hey, dude, like, what do I do?"
It's, and every state is different, and so like I've been hunting my whole life, and like I look at Montana regulations, I'm like, this is foreign to me, right? Like it's so difficult to understand, and to people who grew up there, it's not. And so yeah, just talking to somebody who's navigated it and figured it out is probably the best way to go about it, because it can be like, okay, well I'm in Unit 8, but I'm in a Palouse zone, but I'm not in a, doesn't matter for my deer tag. Like it gets weird. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of nuances that you have to understand and know before you go out, because you can get yourself in hot water in a hurry if you don't.
Now, and okay, is there a difference between a buck and doe? Like, so is there a time when I can hunt either? Does it matter?
Yeah, for Idaho, it's just a tag. You can hunt either.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can take a buck or a doe as long as the season's open.
Okay.
Now, obviously, there is, mule deer tags that are different. There are some units that changes, and like draw tags. Like there's certain draw tags that are one or the other. But generally speaking, yes, if you bought yourself a whitetail tag and hunted the Panhandle, you can shoot either or.
Okay, that's good info. Yeah. I also had a question about sheds. This is your world, dude. I've seen your shed room. I have been in the woods a lot in my life. I have never once, not once, walked up and found a shed. And I'm talking about like an antler that sheds off. I went into the room in your house, and I think there was like 100 in there.
At least.
Yeah. What the hell, dude?
Well,
I don't want to like give away all your secrets, but maybe you can toe into a little bit.
I bet it's because he goes into the forest and you're hunting right next to your house.
Well, he either goes into the forest 100 times more than I do, which is possible.
I do.
Yeah. Or you have some magical ability to find sheds.
So it's interesting you mentioned that.
I had to.
So growing up, I grew up in a completely different zone than up here in the Panhandle. I was down by Lewiston in the Clearwater drainage. And so finding antlers down there was honestly easier. It was easier down there because the bucks could only really bed in certain areas. And I was like, all right, you go there, and that's where the antlers are going to be, right? It's difficult. I can tell you this year I hiked just under 300 miles, and I only picked up like 18 sheds.
Just 18, huh?
And that's a lot of miles on the ground, knowing where to be, right? Yeah. And this year was really weird because we didn't have a winter, like a heavy snowpack, until late. And so everywhere that I normally find sheds, they weren't there. Like year after year, I can go back to these areas and genuinely, truly find 3 to 10, in these areas where I know they should be. Of course, that's gridding, the right elevations, the right bedding zones, the right landscape.
Dude, see, I knew.
I'm like walking up Canfield Mountain. I'm like, where are they?
Yeah, not so
on
much.
The trail.
Yeah. And so like this year I struggled because like I had to kind of relearn, I had to get out of my own knowledge zone, right? Where I was like, this is where they should be, and I'm not finding them. What the hell? Right. And so I'm like, okay. Just because you found a lot in the past doesn't mean you know where to be every time. So it's like, all right, let's start over. Let's look at the map. Where have I have not hit, right? And so like this year I started trying to find the highest elevation points I could. And I started finding sheds at 4,000 to 5,000 feet. Normally I'm picking them up at 2,900 to 3,600.
Just variations in temperature, things like that.
Yeah, well, they had a pretty warm fall. They had a ton of feed up high. The mature bucks want to be up high, solitary away from the does, late season especially, and they didn't have the snowpack to push them down. There was no reason for them to come out of those high bedding zones. And so they were high and shedding late in January, where normally I'm picking them up early January. I wasn't this year.
So this is where knowing the animal and how they behave, that's the key.
Yeah. And it's it's evolving every year, right?
Yeah.
But this is how I become successful in the whitetail woods, right? I'd spend my springs looking for antlers, and oftentimes that leads to success in the fall, right? Because I'm figuring out where they want to be, where their bedding areas are, where they're feeding, what they want to do these late seasons. And if you can find a big shed of sheds and you didn't have 25 inches of snow in December and January, that deer is going to be there in December in his bedding area. You can kill him there the next year.
So I guess like overall what I'm getting is, yeah, you can, if you're just starting out, just get out in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
But like to really be the next level of success, you got to put in a lot of groundwork. And you really need to understand where you're hunting. You need to understand the behavior of the animals in that specific area. And that's how you're going to find real success. And that takes a lot of time.
Guys who've been doing it for a long time will still tell you miles for piles.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to walk a long time. And the thing is what a lot of people do, and what I made the mistake of doing, especially when I came up here. Like normally I could just walk a general area, right, where I know deer should be, and I didn't have to grid all that hard. Up here, if you looked at my tracks, I might not walk from a mile across the mountain, but I did probably 12 miles, right? Because my tracks are 10 to 15 yards apart from each other, doing perfect grids across the mountain, because it is so easy to walk by an antler. And like I have antler hunted the same area for 5 years, and on the 5th year picked up an elk shed that was hidden on the backside of a bush that I just never saw, because I walked the same line every time, right? This is where I start, this is where I end. And that 5th year, for whatever reason, I decided to go a different direction, and holy shit, there's an antler that I just never saw. It's so easy to walk by them.
See, there you go, Dave. No excuse.
What's hiking?
Find some sheds this year.
I'm already thinking about going to get boots after he started saying that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, it's one thing.
It's either a new truck or boots. What are you going to do?
Boots.
Okay.
Same price. So.
Way cheaper. I hope not.
Oh, man. So I also wanted to touch on, and this is like the most intimidating part of hunting for me, and it's only because I haven't really done it, is like how do you process an animal after you put it down? The beginning part doesn't super intimidate me. I know like I'll get it wrong a million times, but it's not a huge unknown. Whatever. I know how to shoot a gun. I know how to shoot a bow. That's fine. Mm-hmm. When you put the animal down, this is where I'm like kind of struggling.
Okay.
I know there's a lot to it. If you can give us an overview.
There's a lot to it. And I think we're going to try to do a butchering class.
I was going to ask about that. That would be huge.
Right before the season starts this year, to help people out.
Sign me up.
I think we're going to try to do lambs, so you get like actual.
Can't have my goats. Sorry.
Okay.
I love them, but
we'll see.
Okay.
Why lambs?
They have generally the same anatomy of an ungulate, right? They're 4-legged animal, and so things are going to be generally the same. You'll get the process down, right?
Okay.
So what I do, all right, I think the number one thing that people make mistake doing is they don't cut off the tarsal glands. Now, you can just avoid the tarsal glands. The tarsal glands are inside of the back legs on a deer and an elk. And it's something that they're pissing on all year long. It becomes really, really bad as they start ramping up in October, November, and you can really tell they're starting to rut when those things are turning black. And they're very, very odorous. I know guys who will tie them to their bootlaces and walk out to their hunting spot, and they swear every deer that they shot is walking straight to them. So the first thing I do is cut off the tarsal glands without touching them, right? I cut in the skin all the way around them, because that is the number one thing that people get on their meat, where people are like, this meat is so gamey. Like, it tastes really nasty, right? And it does. If you touch it and you touch your meat, you ruined your meat. It will be gamey. Wow. And I mean, I shoot, again, mature deer, and every one of my bucks is just as good eating as a 2-year-old doe. I mean, they are fantastic, but I take my time, right? So that's the first thing I do, is I cut off the tarsal glands, and then I change knives, just in case that knife did touch part of the tarsal.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm like, being clean about processing your animal is going to make or break how that animal eats the rest of the year, right? So take your time, make it right. From there, I mean, a whitetail, you're going to gut. An elk, you're generally just going to quarter, right? And so quartering is a whole different process. But for a deer, especially in the field, if you're dragging it back to your truck, like I used to do, you're going to gut it in the field, right? So if you're going to, you can start up as high as you want on the brisket. If you're going to shoulder mount it, obviously you don't want to cut into the brisket, right? So you want to start down where the diaphragm kind of ends right there. And then you want to run your knife all the way down as shallow as possible. I mean, be careful, lift up on that skin as you're doing it, because if you puncture those guts, it is going to suck. The rest of the process is going to suck. And of course, that bile and everything is getting on your meat, which is, again, tainting the flavor of your meat. Everything you do matters, right? Dirt, grass, you don't want it on your meat. You don't want the bile from the guts on the meat. It's everything you can. Now, if you do happen to cut the guts, it's not catastrophic. You know, if you've got water bottles on site, once you get the guts out, just wash out the body cavity, right? Anyhow, I cut all the way down. Now in Idaho, this is a law that you probably want to know. This is probably a mistake most people make. You have to leave evidence of sex on the animal. So even if it's got a big old set of antlers, you have to leave the genitals. Apparently the antlers aren't enough of identifier.
Is that the new gender deal that's going on with deer? We had, okay. But we are identifying them by body parts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, body
That's
parts.
different.
Yeah, there is a male and a female.
There is a male and a female.
There's no cat deer out
so
there.
Yeah, you got to cut down around that. Now I generally stop short of the anus, and I get the sharpest knife I can, and I cut it out, cut the anus out, and then I push that back up into the body cavity. And that's going to be probably where most people struggle, because you got to, it's a pretty good cavity. Then you got to cut it all the way out and push it back. And again, don't get it on the meat. The reason why I do that is it's the easiest way to get all the guts out all at once without blowing out the bladder. Because if you try to cut out that from the inside, or you try to just rip it out, you're going to rip open that bladder, and you're going to have piss all over your meat, all over everything. So if you're trying to do this clean, right, you got to, how can you do it as clean as possible? It's easier with two people, you know. I know, and I'm making this very broad and very quick.
All right.
But yeah, generally once you open all that up and you open up the pelvis, you can tip the guts out. Now, the diaphragm is what is going to get in your way. So I reach up inside and I just feel the diaphragm, and I cut it all the way out, all the way around. And then I reach up as high as I can and I cut the esophagus. And if you can hold on to the esophagus, you will pull all the guts all at once. And
wow.
Yeah.
Do you wear gloves while you do it, or you just barehanded?
Barehanded. No. And I can,
asking for a friend.
I've done this enough. I can literally have a deer gutted in 3 to 4 minutes. And it's, you know, once you've done it, it's not hard.
That's what I just need to see.
It's very
I just need to
daunting.
do it one time.
I need to go to that class.
One guy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very daunting, but it's not hard. It's really not. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to get the guts out of the body, right? That's your only job, is getting the guts out of the body. It's not that hard, right? It doesn't matter what it looks like. Now, obviously, you want to be clean about it. So the more you do it, the better it'll get. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay. Then what?
Okay. From there,
let's go with just deer at this point.
Yeah.
Well, so I know quartering is a whole nother thing.
You put your big boy pants on.
Okay.
Like our president, his big boy meeting.
Diapers.
You guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway.
We were just talking about that. He selected Trump as his vice president.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
A woman Trump.
That's going to be awkward.
Yeah.
Trump's on both tickets.
So yeah, you put your big boy pants on, you start dragging. No, if you can, you know, and honestly, to my dismay, most people are hunting on 4-wheelers. So they're just dragging it to a 4-wheeler, throwing it on the front or the back and driving it back to their truck. And if your truck is close, you know, drag a deer to your truck is a lot easier than quartering it on the ground. Also a lot cleaner, because when you get home, then you can hang it up and actually skin it clean. So you're not trying to skin it out in the dirt. Right. So That hide adds protection, so you're not getting dirt and grime and crap all over your meat. Generally, if I'm not anywhere close to my truck, which anymore I never am, I don't even gut them anymore. I'm first thing I do is I skin them for taxidermy purposes, right? If I'm shoulder mounting, and as I skin off one side, I'm also quartering it at the same time. So once I remove the skin from the front shoulder, I'm then lifting that leg up, and if you cut underneath, it's super easy. It's not attached to anything. Mm-hmm. So you just cut it completely off. It's just literally meat that you're cutting off and straight into a game bag. Never gets close to dirt.
And that's deer also. You're talking about deer too?
Deer.
Okay.
Yep, deer and elk. And then it's easier if you're not shoulder mounting it, right? Because then you don't have to skin it off the shoulder. What you can do is you can just cut that up. Now you're going to get some hair on your meat doing it this way, right? But that hair is still protecting all that meat, right? So you're not getting as much exposure to dirt and things like that. And then when you get home, you can take your time skinning the meat off of that particular shoulder. That's the way I would recommend doing it with elk, specifically, because it's a big animal and it's really gangly, and eventually you're going to roll a shoulder into the dirt. If you start skinning everything and there's 2 or 3 hands working, like you're going to get it dirty. So keep the skin on it if you can. Now it's kind of a catch-22, right? Because generally when you're harvesting elk, especially in September, it's hot. You want to get it cooled down. The best thing you can do is just get that meat off of the bone, or off the animal itself and starting to cool down. So taking the hide off does help with that. But if you're close to camp, get it to camp, skin it, put it back in the game bag. Now, if you know you're going to be clean about it and you can skin it, do so, right? There is a lot of people who do skin the entire half of an elk. They skin it, they lay out the entire skin on the ground, and so you got one exposed side. That is the best way to do it if you're practiced, and you can do that, because then you got the meat, you just put it straight into a game bag, you cut off the hind quarter. It's really easy to do the hind quarter for the first one, because when you split it open, it's really easy to get that ball joint. The second one generally is a little bit harder because those hips don't want to comply near as well. There's not a counter force, so you got to kind of find that ball joint to cut. And then once you cut off both legs on one side, you can kind of roll it onto its belly, and then you can cut off the back strap on one side. All right. And then you can continue skinning it and rolling it over, cut off the back strap on the other side, and then continue skinning it. And now you have an animal that never touched the dirt. And you just kind of rolled it as you skinned it, right?
Yep.
Quartered it, rolled it as the process goes. Now that is if you've got time and buddies and the knowledge, that is the cleanest, best way to do it. You're cooling the animal down the fastest. You get into the game bags, and it's the cleanest getting back to camp. You don't have hair all over everything. If you're by yourself, cut them shoulders off, especially in fading light, right? Like you want to get these things in game bags and hanging before you have to spend the night with wolves and cougars and bears. Yeah, by yourself out there, man, it gets, pretty quick when the sun goes down. You're not nearly as manly as you were an hour ago. So anyway, that's okay. We could go on an hour.
Do you need to get it
process these things?
Do you need to get it on ice real quickly or no?
No, I mean, you don't want to put the meat on ice.
Okay.
Period.
Okay. You
don't want to get it wet. Water will taint meat as fast as piss will, as fast as tarsal glands will.
Okay.
If you've ever seen meat that was in water and it's just gray, it'll ruin the flavor.
Yep. Made that mistake. Okay. So you get it back to your truck. How quickly, you probably process yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I won't, I'm sure. How quickly do you need to get it to a butcher, and are they easy to find?
They're not hard to find. And actually I can recommend a really good one that'll come to you.
Cool.
Mike Edgehouse. He's a mobile butcher. He does a fantastic job. But there are other butchers in town that you can bring it to them. Now that is expensive. So if you're going to do it, I would say you want to get it to a butcher within 1 to 2 days, unless you have some sort of freezer that you can hang it in, or cooler, which would be, what I recommend the most is, you do want to get the meat cooled down. So when I say don't put it on ice, do put it in a cooler that has ice in it, but have some sort of barrier so that
you just don't want to get it wet.
It's not getting wet, right? Okay. So you can cool it down. But if you can get into a walk-in freezer and let it hang for a week, that's aging that meat, right? And it's allowing some of that blood and other things to run out of the meat and kind of age it a little bit and give you a little bit better consistency in your hamburger. I've tested this before where I immediately processed an animal within a day, and then I've let another animal hang for a week and a half, and my hamburger was much, much more watery on the animal I processed right away. Oh, right.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, there's just different thought processes on that. And especially, if you can kill a deer in November and hang it up while it's freezing outside, that's fantastic. Yeah. Right.
Okay. That's awesome. And you're just hanging it in the game bags, like the ones I would get it.
Yeah. If I hang them whole at my house, like I have a gambrel system that just goes into my tow hitch, and I can just lift them up and I skin them out whole, and I just let the whole animal hang. And then, if I've got some time, I go out there and I cut a front shoulder off and go inside and I get all the meat off of it. And I've done a lot, so I can process deer pretty quick, but it's nice, especially if it's cold, because you don't have to worry about working on it all at once. Okay. You take your time.
Well, I'm only slightly less intimidated at this point. Yeah. But basically what I got out of that is I just need to come to the class.
Yeah. Or if you want to go hunting this year and you want me to come out with you, and I'd love to show you hands-on, how to do it. Or come to the class, do some filming.
Let's do both.
And yeah.
That'd be super cool. Because I just feel like, it's one of those things. I just need to see it one time and then be like, okay, now I have.
That's really what it is. Right. There's a lot of people who are like, it's so intimidating. I don't know where to go. It's like, it is. It's one of those things that it is until you do it and you're like, oh, like, okay, yeah, I get it.
That has like stopped me. Like I've gone in the woods and I've been like, I want to kill something, but at the same time, I'm like, I almost don't, because I don't know what to do with it after. Right. Yep. I don't want to waste it. Like that's important to me. That means why I'm there.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Dude. Okay. So, we're getting long on time. I guess we'll wrap it up, but, I
got time. So you got more questions. Ask them.
You got more questions?
I'm good. Okay. I've created more questions.
I know that's where I'm at too. So, okay. Hopefully you guys will put on that class.
Yeah.
I know it's a big undertaking to find.
It is. And we're probably going to partner with Mike Edgehouse, that mobile butcher, to do it.
Yeah.
And, it's just a matter of finding enough people to sign up.
I don't think you're going to have a hard time.
Problem with
Kick it to us, bro. We got that.
Yeah. Okay. We have people asking us, especially. We even have a Facebook group that we've been talking on that people have been asking. They want to see how to do that. So, there is
because we got to pay for the sheep, right? Like,
there's a huge audience out there. Yeah, so if you give us details on that, we can absolutely let people know.
Now, you guys have also been doing backcountry medicine classes. Who's putting those on? Is it the Response Ready guys?
Yeah, Response Ready.
Okay.
There's some firefighters out of Spokane.
I tolerate firefighters, I guess. But
I taught them what they know. So. But it's not a bad class.
How do people find out about those? Because you've done more than one of that, right?
Yeah, I think they've done 2 or 3 now.
Okay.
They always post on their Instagram, and we throw it on our social media.
Let us know next time, because that's another good class. I think people, if you're thinking about getting in the woods, this is how to deal with trauma that might be on yourself or your buddy that might happen while you're out there in the woods, and that's kind of an important skill set to know.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know, being in law enforcement, being able to keep yourself alive to get to a medical professional is key to surviving.
Yeah, and I'll go back to that too. That was my original thought, is just make sure that if you're hunting up here, if you're looking for those things, that you find people that are actually knowledgeable about these things. Check out North Idaho Archery, look at their website, follow them on Instagram. But find the right people. There's a lot of people that know how to kill an animal, but honestly, the whole process, and obviously, you said so many things today. I could probably, like I said, I have a ton of questions. Sure. We're going to be talking, but make sure that you find somebody that's actually knowledgeable about these things, so that you're being respectful of the environment, the animals, everything else, so that we can just keep things like this and having good quality hunting going on and taking care of the animals and the species and everything else. I think that's super important.
Yeah. And if you're in Coeur d'Alene or visiting, come check out North Idaho Archery. They're up on North Schreiber Way here in Coeur d'Alene. Pro shop, got an indoor range, and obviously they've got guys there with a ton of knowledge about local hunting. So super valuable to have you in the community. Thanks for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was glad to be here.
Yeah, you shed some light in my mind on it. And I think my overarching goal now is to just put myself around the right people at the right time and get the help that I need.
Yep. And if you're interested in this class that he's talking about, shoot us a message.
Yep.
Let us know so that we can start getting people together, because I've wanted to go to something like this for a while. And I know there's a lot of people out there that would.
So. And, maybe your kids are just getting into hunting and you want to have them come along. Like, I'm sure you guys would be totally open to that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's our number one thing, right? We want to get people into the outdoors. We want to get men, families that have come from the city. Let's call it what it is, right? I mean, they grew up in urban environments where hunting wasn't a thing, or it was a thing you watched on TV, and it is daunting. And so that's what we love to do. So don't be bashful. Come in, talk to us. Let's figure out what you got to do to be successful.
And you guys sell tags there too, right?
We do.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you can get your tags there.
We're an Idaho Fish and Game vendor.
From personal experience, I was fairly new to archery, and I went in there and don't be intimidated. You guys are super chill with new people, so you're not going to get anybody looking down on you because you don't know anything. Right. That's ideal. So bring it in, check them out, and thanks, guys.
Yeah,
good time.
Honestly.
Let's do it again.
Thanks for having me.
See ya.